I was taught there's no such thing as a friggin' ghost, until I went looking, damn, I found them really close. EVPs and my camera saying please get out.
Toddler's x-ray shows dental work done. Parents' insurance says otherwise. From Reddit user /u/Allison_B. I am not a doctor, but I am in the healthcare field as a dental hygienist. The creepiest/most confusing thing I have ever seen is as follows. We had a new patient come in for a cleaning. He was around 3 or 4, and Mom said he had never been to the dentist before. Not uncommon for what I see on a daily basis. So at first I didn't think anything of it. I did his cleaning and then went to take his routine x-ray. This is where the shit got weird. After looking at the x-rays, I could see that the child had already had a large amount of dental work done. He was around 6 or 7 components, tooth color, filling. When I sat back down at my chair, I asked the parents again if he has ever been to a dentist. They were both adamant that he hadn't, and also said there was no way a relative could have taken him without them knowing. What the fuck? How did this happen? Who took him? Where were the parents? Had they possibly been in jail for a long time and didn't know he was taken to the dentist by someone else and had work performed? What if this wasn't really their child and actually some kid they kidnapped? His insurance had no record of him having previous dental work, so that's where it was a dead end too. I think about it often, but I know that ultimately I have never gotten an answer. It sucks. Guy takes so much ketamine, he's high for 3 weeks. Only chuckles creepily. From Reddit user /u/scalpem316. Medical student, while on my psych rotation, comes across an individual who was a chemistry grad student. Apparently he had taken an astronomical amount of ketamine, and he was just continuously disoriented for the entire time. I was on the portion of the rotation 3 weeks. I never heard him speak a word. 95% of the time, he was wrapped up in his sheets like a mummy, and he would just periodically laugh, a crazy soft chuckle from under his covers. If you try to talk to him, the creepiest laugh I have ever heard. I'll never forget that. Paramedic responds to an extremely upsetting suicide call from Reddit user /u/JFA_16. Paramedic checking in. A few years ago, I responded to a call for a pregnant female who shot herself. The 911 caller hangs up before any more information could be gathered by dispatch. We arrived to find a girl in her early to mid-20s sitting on the bathroom floor, leaned against the front of the bathtub, slumped over. She was obviously pregnant, looked to be in her 3rd trimester to me. She was unresponsive and barely breathing, with a rapid cardiac pulse. A small revolver was on the floor next to her. We found a single gunshot wound to the center of her very pregnant abdomen. The patient's mother and 4-year-old son were on scene. The mother told us that the patient invited her over for dinner and for some company, and she had been fighting with the father of her fetus all day long. The mother stated that in the middle of dinner, the patient excused herself from the table to use the bathroom. That's when the mother heard a single gunshot. Anyways, the mother told us that the patient was 23 and was almost full term. I can't remember how many weeks, but it was 34 with her second pregnancy. It took to make a long story short, we intubated the patient, established 2 IVs, carried her down the second floor to the truck, and hauled ass to the trauma center. The patient went into cardiac arrest, and we were wheeling her into the hospital. As we were wheeling her into the hospital, CPR was started, and an emergency section was performed in the ER. Both mom and baby died. The bullet went right through the baby and through mom's abdominal artery. The belly was full of blood. Fucked up call. Suicidal man saws both of his arms off. From a Reddit user, /u/psychopathic therapist thaw. The one that got me the most was a patient who came to us after attempting suicide by sawing both of his arms off at the forearm with a table saw. His arms were reattached fairly successful too, with only one limited immobility. All I could think was how bad it would have to be to live in his head that sawed his arms off. Seems better than that. He has since completed suicide. Sorry for the noise of the dogs, guys. Can't help it. Psych patient who assaulted a woman reveals he's only pled insanity because his lawyers told him to. From Reddit user /u/for sure. On a medical school rotation in psychiatric, I rotated at the hospital, which is insanely a full-time psych ward for folks who have pleaded insanity or ends up in an acute psych hospital and were eventually transferred here because they could not become well enough to get home. The place was actually very nice. It was normally like you would see on TV, or it was nothing like you would see on TV. It was insanely like a college dorm with 6 or 8 wings total. Each wing had like 16 rooms, and each wing had broken down by gender. Each wing also had a gated outdoor area and a gym area, so the patients had relentlessly good life considering. met many patients with many crazy stories, but one always will stand out. This young guy, about 25 years old, was there. He had these delusions just after college about some girl he had a crush on from his freshman year of college. She wrote for a popular magazine, and he supposedly had these delusions that she was writing about him to make fun of him. He hunted her down in her hometown, raped her, and tried to kill her, but she escaped. He then pled insanity and was placed here. I went up and talked to him as a little third-year med student. I started asking about his delusions and whatnot. It turned out his father was high up in an intentional corporation worth millions. The kid, who was hauntingly normal on the surface and incredibly creepy once you started digging, told me that he basically pled insanity only because his lawyer said to. He never had a delusion, never had hallucinations, nothing. He basically thought the girl was hot in college, drove 400 miles to rape her, then freaked out, but his lawyers obviously had pled insanity because as a softer up-class kid, he would do much better in a psych hospital than in prison. So, there he was. Luckily, he'll likely spend longer in there than he would have in prison because generally that's how it works. But he seriously creeped me the fuck out. Psych patient has upsetting hallucinations. From Reddit user /u/PM_me_your_sobber. I was having a patient sign her administration paperwork. Everything was going normally and she seemed coherent until she looked out the window and asked me, "Did you see that?" I hadn't seen anything, and she said a man just jumped off the building. Then she shook her head and mumbled to herself how her mind isn't right anymore. Freaked me the fuck out. Now I am terrified of getting old and having dementia. Hospital worker honors dying woman's particular last word. From Reddit user /u/redheaddpt. I was sitting a patient up at the edge of the bed in ICU when she started getting all squirrely. She didn't speak much English but kept saying, "Stand, stand." So I helped her stand up. After standing for a few seconds, something told me to lay her back down. Before her head even hit the pillow, her eyes rolled back and she was gone. She had a massive stroke and was gone on the spot. She all but died in my arms, but I like to think I honored her last wish of wanting to stand. Doctor uncovers family's horrifying secret. From Reddit user /u/Big Sky and Sunshine. Whenever you admit a patient, you have to inquire about their status in the case of code being called. I had an elderly patient, late 80s, early 90s, who was severely demented and chronically ill, in and out of the hospital every month, barely holding on to life, basically a horrible misery quietly of life. I asked the patient's family, I think it was the granddaughter who had medical POV or POA, about, I'm not sure. It was a while ago, about their DNR status. You don't want to put someone through brutal resuscitation that may not even work if it isn't something that they would want if they wanted to die naturally. She flat out stated that, oh, we want everything done for him because we really need his check. I didn't understand at first, but apparently the family was living off his Social Security and could not have cared less about his pain and his suffering or his wishes. I'm pretty sure it was the creepiest thing I have ever seen. These people were supposed to be his loved ones taking care of him, and they were using him like an inhumane object.
I was taught there's no such thing as a friggin' ghost, until I went looking, damn, I found them really close. EVPs and my camera saying please get out.